Okay, good evening, guys. Welcome. I'm very happy being back after a month. And what makes me more happy is my friend Subramaniam Narayan is with me today. And today we are going to talk about trust. Trust is something fundamental to life because if from the word trust we remove the T, what is left is rust. Now, trust could mean different things to different people, but for me, simple three words: uncompromised by doubt. That is trust for me. Well, guys, all of those who don't know me, my name is Sandeep Gupta. I'm a culture and a consciousness coach. I work in the space of organization development and leadership development. And I leave you with a question: can spirituality and money coexist? The answer is yes. All you need is an integrated approach. Now I pass on the mic to my friend, whom we call Subbu. You know, and Subbu, do I have your permission to call you Subbu?
Yes, please.
So I pass on the mic to Subbu with a request to introduce himself briefly and then set the ball rolling for today's discussion. So over to you, Subbu.
Hi. Like Sandeep said, we also work on culture predominantly. And when I say culture, we focus on building trust. And with that, working on shifting the culture in the organization. And I say that because you can't build trust without changing behaviors. So we are an OD consultant, and we are celebrating 10 years this year anniversary, and we are happy doing what we are doing. And Sandeep, thank you for the opportunity to come onto your show.
Yeah, so Subbu, why don't you, since you work so much on trust, I leave it to you to set the ball rolling for today's discussion.
Yeah, so trust, everybody agrees that it is important. But when it comes to practice, what we find most of the time is people do not leverage the power of trust. And I can relate to that. Why do I say that? Because people do agree that trust is important, but most of them don't realize that trust can be improved. Trust can be changed, and you can work on trust through behaviors. Now, how do I say that you can improve trust? Is a simple fact that now you have enough research which enables you to measure trust. And imagine the power of measuring trust in you as a leader or your team, working out what's the trust score of your team, or instead working at an organizational level and saying what is the trust level in a organization or a business division. Now, we talk about measuring trust, and we also say trust is important, but research clearly establishes one fact, and the fact is that companies that are on the top 20% for their innovation and performance, when you look at those companies, you will see that trust is the single differentiator. You compare that with the bottom 20% of companies in terms of innovation and performance, you will see again trust is the common factor. And so you can clearly see the connection between trust and Sandeep. When we say trust and performance and innovation, in fact, I would say trust leads to your shareholder value, your stock value, because the bottom lines are directly impacted with trust.
Well, I totally resonate with what you say, Subbu. You see, people got to understand one thing, that what is a business? Like the way I look at business, it's a socio-economic relationship between three sets of people. And who are the three sets? The owners who establish the business. Number two, the people who work, the employees, right? Or the service providers. And the third are the customers.
Yeah.
Now, these three sets, they're helping each other to help themselves. So, and they function like an ecosystem between themselves. And since it's a relationship, a socio-economic human relationship, so what applies to human relationships equally applies to businesses also,
Yeah.
right? So, and trust is the only factor which bring two people together. Trust is the only factor, where people bind with each other. So you can say trust is that one single mother factor, which contributes to the wellness and flourishment of relationships in business, in personal life, in an organization.
Yeah, so true. We talk of human capital. We all understand that the core competencies now, there's only one frontier that corporates are wanting to capture, and that is the human element. And when you're working with human element, we all understand that relationships is what makes that human element survive, thrive, and flourish. And when you're dealing with the human element, and if you are not focusing on trust, imagine the consequences of that. And very often I hear clients wanting to bring about change, wanting to keep the mergers happen as smooth as they can, and sometimes even address issues of working in silos, performance being low, and all of those. But these are just symptoms. And you said mother as a reference to the trust. And that is so true because trust is at the core. Trust is at the core of a human relationship. And when you are talking about delivering results, delivering performance, and making that difference in the market or in the society, we are talking about getting that done through us as human beings. And if you do not consider trust as the key core component, you ask yourself, what would that difference be? Because if you're using team building efforts or culture change without working at the trust level, which is at the core, you're just working at the symptoms and fixing the superficial level and not addressing the core or the root of the issues,
No, you're
isn't
absolutely
it?
right, Subbu. You see, now when we hear the word Tata, what happens? A particular image that, okay, the product or the service is going to be of value, it'll be value for money, it'll be ethical, it'll be good, etc., etc. Why are we getting these feelings? For the pure and simple reason the organization has built the necessary trust in us. So, this takes me to the point, and I would like to share with everyone that trust does not come on its own. You got to work towards it. And trust basically starts from your internal trust once you start trusting yourself, trusting your skills, trusting your tendencies, good, bad, ugly, whatever they are, accept and trust them, right? And take corrective action. It's only then that you can show trust in other people. Because, it's human nature. You can only give what you have. So if you have 100 rupees in your pocket, can you give me 101? Obviously, no. The same rule applies over here. And believe me, trust is a two-way traffic.
Yeah. And it reminds me of the word vulnerable. And I was with corporate for over 30 years, and my last job was the Asia Pacific director in Singapore for one of the multinationals. What was interesting for me was in my entire career, I don't recall a discussion with anybody or a team or a supervisor or anyone for that matter where we are discussing the absence or presence of trust. And I always keep wondering, why is that not happening? And the only thing that pops up in my mind when I think in those terms is we have been brought up from childhood, and many cultures believe that trust once broken, we give an example or a metaphor of a glass breaking. And if a glass is broken, they say you can't mend it after that. The crack always appears. While that may be true from a belief perspective, research says something else entirely. Research says you can actually heal trust and then build trust. And very often, when we discuss these issues or when we introduce trust and kind of pitch in with the clients who are not familiar, often we get a question saying, my experiences have been in a way that I won't trust another person so easily. And you're telling me to trust everyone. How does that work? Now, another factor that I like to bring here is each one of us has a different level of trust. And what do I mean by that? Just like you have different capacity of a car, 1600 cc or 3000 cc, similarly, human beings have different tank or different capacity of trust. And what do I mean by that? I may have a trust tank which may be 80% full, or maybe my capacity is just 80%. There would be somebody else whose trust tank or trust capacity might be 90% or 40%. And with that trust capacity is how we come into our relationships. And when we start building relationship with people or anyone for that matter, and Sandeep, you and me have had such good discussions in the past, that it is the capacity of our individual trust that determines how we build relationship. And that is the reason why your experience or my experience or someone else's experience is always different. And while we talk about difference in experiences, let's also understand trust is a very provocative word in the sense that if somebody betrayed me, somebody, let's say somebody did something, the reaction to that particular, let's say, wrong behavior or wrong expectation could create a significant response, provocative response from me from an emotional perspective versus someone else. Someone else may say, oh, I understand why he did that. But someone else will say, I will never accept what he did to me for the same reaction or for the same trigger. So it's very relative and subjective. And that is one of the challenges that we always face with building trust. But we have a researched approach to it where we scientifically define what are the behaviors that help in building trust.
Well, what you say, Subbu, again, I totally resonate. I agree. But two things come out of it. Number one, a person comes with 90% trust tank, internal trust tank. You see, our personalities, you can broadly divide them or our existence into 12, 10 to 12 broad categories. Health, wealth, relationships, career, money, spirituality, social, political, etc., etc. Now, this 90%, need not be a, excuse me, a common factor across the domains. I
Yeah,
could trust someone 100% as far as logical
true,
thinking is concerned,
true.
but I would just not trust that guy of delivering something in time.
True.
So you with trust, when you trust someone, you got to make a choice. You see, you need to make a mindful or an intentional choice. And now again, now making a choice is not a simple thing, though we believe that it's immediately done, because your state of mind at that point of making the choice, plays an important role. And the factors which I say A, B, C, D, E, when you're making that choice, that is the association. With
Yeah.
that event, what is your past association or the present association? B, your belief systems. How are they playing up?
Yeah.
C, your cognitive patterns based on your past experiences. Next is the developmental period. When you were young, what were you fed in? And the E is the emotional state at that point of time. But
So
at the
true.
same, but so again, you need to integrate them, because in life, nothing less than an integrated approach works, and nothing more is needed. But the good news is there's a lot of science which says this integration is not difficult, provided you are intentional, you focus, and you take the correct steps. And the other point which came up, while you were giving my and your example, trust is a big factor to promote collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see, and collaboration comes from the sense of we. Now, usually people, confuse collaboration with cooperation. Now, cooperation comes from the sense of I, a doctor and a patient, an advocate and a client. It's all I. Will this guy pay my fees? Will this lawyer help me to win my case? It's I. It's transactional. But when it comes from we, collaboration, it is what will we get? And this we tends to defy mathematics. 1 plus 1 becomes 11 in the case of collaboration. So, trust, I believe, has that power when placed properly, intelligently, and rationally.
Yeah, absolutely. And couple of things pops up in my mind when you say that. Collaboration, and you spoke about we. And one of the beautiful things that comes out of that is you move from we to even a higher self of ourselves in looking at what can be done. Of course, profit from a commercial perspective, and for all those people who are profit driven, profit is a goal. But along with the profit, if we could deliver something good for the society or the community or the progress of mankind, then it allows us to move to a higher self. So that's one point which kind of came to my mind as you were talking about collaboration, but also the fact of you highlighting the fact that trust in different domains can be different from an individual's perspective. And that's so true. And we are in some ways talking about trust of capability. I could be a good friend and you will trust me for my relationship as a friend. But when it comes to delivering certain aspects, let's say in sports, I may not be as trustworthy versus someone else. But when it comes to delivering, let's say, OD consulting or let's say something else, maybe the trust of capability that you have with me might be much higher versus me winning a sports game, as an example. So trust of capability, like you said, domain, I think it's also the ability and capability of our team members, our associates, and we seldom consciously acknowledge that fact. We say trust, but trust has different meanings in different situations. And you also said our state of mind as well. And many a times we don't differentiate that. But there is an element of trust of capability as well. Do I trust my team members are capable of delivering the goals of the organization? And if I feel they are not as capable, then am I being direct in giving my feedback in a way that I can help them grow through the feedback and the collaborative effort and the collaborative brilliance that can come off. So, trust is always interesting. In fact, I sometimes wonder trust is so much at the core of our relationships or our anything that we do that I wonder whether trust is also a value.
Well, yes, trust could be considered a value, but definitely it's not an emotion. Trust is not an emotion, though some people do say that trust is an emotion. I believe it is driven by emotion. Emotions uh, play an important role in establishing the trust quotient in something or some person, but it is an actionable thing. You see, and interestingly, like when we talk of organizations, Subbu, uh, I see three kinds of trusts playing out over there. One is the strategic trust, one is the personal trust, and the third is the organizational trust. Uh, for some, it might be confusing, but for personally, I believe this is perfect. Why? You see, an organization is much larger than a business.
Mhm.
Now, there are three layers to an organization. The first layer, or the bottom layer, or the soul of the organization are the people who come together. Like I defined business, right? So all the three, they come together, right? So that's the first layer. That's the I layer. They bring in values, they bring in their ethics, they bring in their beliefs, and what binds them together is the trust. So this becomes the personal trust. Now, since they have to stay together to achieve a common goal or a common mission or a common vision, whatever words you might like, they come together and form the we.
Mhm.
Now, this we is the culture part. And this culture part drives the business part. That is the sale, purchase, production, hiring, systems, procedures, bottom line, top line. So, this culture part, which is the prime driver of the organization, the business for which the organization has been set up, right, is the output or the product of trust, which happens at the bottom layer, that's the people. Like I always give an example. We human beings are made up of three energies primarily: the spirit energy, the mind energy, and the material or the body energy or the physical energy. Now, if we remove the spirit energy, so what is left? You die. Let's bring back the spirit energy and let's remove the mind energy. You are alive, breathing, but incapable of action or thinking. Let's bring the mind energy back. Let's remove the body energy, that's the physical energy, you don't exist. Similarly, in an organization, the people are the soul, right? The culture, that is the we element, is the mind, and the business part is the body. And again, the three need to be integrated to flourish. And wellness and the integration glue, I believe, is trust.
Yeah. Interesting. You said three things. And organizations and management gurus always have this liking to talk about seven number and three numbers and all of that. So in trust, we talk about three dimensions of trust, and we talk about three C's there. And in that, the three C's is the trust of character, which is foundational because your promise, your values, your ethics defines your character. So trust of character. And then trust of communication. You say what you're going to do and follow through with. whatever promises you set, and trust of capability, where you talk about the capability of the person and the ability to delegate work to them and help them grow in whatever field that you're dealing with. So the most of the time we work with these three dimensions, and each of these dimensions have a set of 6 7 behaviors, and then we address these behaviors when it comes to moving the needle or building trust. You also spoke about wellness, and we do corporates, and me included when I was part of the corporate, we would do so much effort in making sure that the environment is as good for them to give the best of their abilities and capabilities. But we seldom ignore that there are certain factors which contribute to that environment. And I'm bringing in a term that is quite often spoken nowadays, is the psychological safety. And psychological safety clearly is a factor that comes into play only and only when there is trust. Psychological safety also brings into play the point on DNI, diversity and inclusion. And diversity and inclusion will not sustain if there is no psychological safety. If I am being not accepted for the way I think, the way I behave, the way I am, and if I can't feel safety in the environment, obviously trust is not in play. And again, so you said the soul, and trust is so systemic in nature, that if your and my trust is not in play, that environment is going to see the impact of that relationship and that lack of trust. And anything in that ecosystem is going to be impacted some way or the other because of our relationship lacking that trust. So trust is at the core and it's very systemic. It impacts the human relationship. And when we talk about human relationship, obviously the society, the corporate, the community. So
Yes, so true. What you said was so true and so interesting, and that threw up the four S's which I use when I talk of relationships, right? Like the first one you mentioned, being seen the way you are, right?
mm,
As simple as that. It's being seen the way you are. And the second requirement, the second S, is soothe. When I'm in distress, is the other person soothing me or not? Third is security. Am I feeling safe to share my heart out, to pour my heart out without being judged? And the fourth is safety. Am I physically safe? These four, this is what I believe, that these four elements, being seen, soothed, security, and feeling safe, right from the time you're born till the time you hang up your boots, which means you die, they do not leave you. At every stage. You expect these out of a relationship. So I tell the managers or the leaders, I said, look, you can just take these four factors and just introspect. Are you seeing the other person as he or she is? When the person comes to you in distress, are you providing the soothing, the balm which the person needs? Is the person opening his or her heart out to you and you not judging? And lastly, your behavior makes the person feel safe physically. Score yourself, and you'll come to know how much the other person is trusting you.
yeah, soothing. is a term that
Hmm.
never gets used, may not be never, but seldom gets used in corporate world. And soothing, I would say, in the modern age that we are living with all our focus on our routines, we seldom stop and reflect whether our behaviors are soothing enough to people around us. We are so focused on achieving targets, we are so driven, and the whole need to be driven and the popularity of, if you're not driven then you're not a performer, kind of a belief, and leaving you with seldom time to reflect. And that brings back to your point on, do you trust yourself?
And Subbu, let me share with you. Recently, I had a client, so these guys asked me to train someone who is the prospective CEO. Typically, like typically what happens these days, running from one job to the other, one task to the other, no time for self, etc., etc. I just told that guy, I said, look, you go for a jog, something strikes you. While you're jogging, can you think, or your pace slows down? And as your thought becomes deeper, your thinking becomes deeper, you tend to become stationary. He said,
Hmm.
yes. I
Hmm.
said, why? That is the way our mind and brain works, right? So always being in a rush in order to achieve more, or trying to be in a rush in order to achieve more, is a myth, is a misconception. You slow down your internal, your external will automatically get accelerated.
Yeah, it teaches you to be strategic
Hmm.
in your choices and decision. And they always say strategy has far more power than always being tactical.
Yeah. So, Subbu, we usually do it for 30 minutes, 35 minutes. We are close to 32 minutes. So, what are the last words you would like to leave with our listeners? And please tell them where they can find you, how can they reach you.
Sure. So, not sure about the last word because we can go on talking about trust. But anyway, I think I'd like to definitely highlight at least 2 points here. A difference of 10% in your trust score, statistically, what we have found and research has proven, is an increase of 10% in your trust score is equivalent to a 30% increase in people's salary. The satisfaction and the emotion that they get with a 30% increase in salary cost is equivalent to a 10% increase in the organization or the team trust score. So that's one point. The second point is leaders, especially, are making so much effort, so much, I would say, intentional, with all good purposes, are making so much effort to drive performance and profitability that many a times I feel they do not stop and understand the fact that trust can deliver that far more easily. And trust is something that can be worked on, can be measured. We can tell you what is the trust score as a leader. And obviously, a good leader, when you talk about a good leader, implies that he is also a trustworthy person. I can't think of a good leader, quote unquote, without him or her being trustworthy or trustable. And so we can tell you clearly, it's so easily fixable, resolvable, and it's such a relief for everybody because whether it is you, me, working with a client, or the teams who, with all good well meaning, want to improve their performance but are unable to have that open discussion with trust being at the core. And we can help you get to that. We can tell you how, and what of building trust. And for all of those who want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch. My name of the company is already there on my screen. Renergetics is Renergetics here that you see. So www.renergetics.com, and you should be able to get in touch with our team and myself.
Well, thank you, Subbu. And my last words would be, guys, to have trust, just apply the formula. FACES. Now, FACES stands for being flexible, F for flexible, A for adaptable, C for coherent, E for energized, and S for stable. If you get these 5 factors into your personality or into your being, you will start trusting yourself easily. You'll start trusting other people easily, and a profound change will come in your life, be it business, be it personal, be it social, be it political. And well, you're on my page, so obviously you know where to find me. So thank you guys for being with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Sandeep.